Call the meeting to order. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, March 19, 2015. Time is 7 p.m. Please call the roll.
President Sells.
Here.
Trustee Sussman.
Here.
Trustee Hamilton.
Here.
Trustee Pollak.
Here.
Trustee Valerian.
Here.
Trustee Collins.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Village Attorney Mars.
Here.
Village Manager Francis. Here. Also present Village Clerk Haley.
So we have a quorum. If you'll please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening to everyone who's here with us tonight, everybody watching at home. If you would like to speak to the village board at any time during our meeting, you're welcome to do so. I just ask that you raise your hand to be recognized by the president, and then make your comments from the podium so that the folks can hear and see what you have to say back at home. A few weeks ago, we had the Girl Scouts with us. Tonight, we have the Boy Scouts with us. So they came in early. What troop were you in? Pack 24.
24.
Awesome. So they're here working on their citizenship and their merit badge, so we're going to be on our best behavior tonight and see if we can actually teach them something. And I wore my pink tie in honor of Trustee Sussman's new garbage can.
No, I think you have the wrong trustee over there. Oh,
So spring has sprung. We've sprung ahead, and spring arrives soon, and Easter's right around the corner. So first up tonight, we have a very happy occasion, the swearing in of a new police officer, Tammy Prime. So I'd ask Chief Weitzel and Officer Prime, please step forward.
Mr. President, trustees, and manager Francis, I would probably ask that the clerk do the swearing in first, and then I will address the board about our new officer after that.
Of course. Say.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Tammy L. Prime,
I, Tammy L. Prime,
do solemnly swear
that
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of a patrol officer of the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
of a patrol officer of the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Congratulations. Thank you.
I would like to tell the board a little bit about Tammy, and after that, I'll have Tammy step up, and she has a big contingent here tonight, her family. And I'll have her introduce her family, and if the board has any questions that they'd like to ask of me or Tammy, that would be fine. Tammy just celebrated her 23rd birthday, correct?
Yes.
Because she brought in a lot of good food the other day. So how she came here, she was number 1 on the eligibility list when it was posted. And after that, she went through all the normal procedures any officer does, our background investigation, physical fitness. It was a long process of medical exams, as it is for any officer that we're going to hire. At the time, we didn't have an opening, or then we shortly did have an opening when the list was posted. Then Tammy went to the State Police Academy in Springfield for 12 weeks. And that's what they call a residential academy, where you sleep there during the weekdays and come home on the weekends. Very, very difficult academy, physically and mentally. She's glad that she's graduated from there for sure. Did very well there. We got monthly reports from the academy as the updates on what was going on there. They were all positive. As in any cadet that goes there, sometimes after the first week you want to turn around and go home. But those that persevere and push through it are the ones that graduate, and Tammy did just that. Myself and the deputy chief drove down to Springfield to attend her graduation. After that, she was assigned to the field training program. She was in the field training program for 4 months. She went through 5 actually different field training officers so that each officer could evaluate her and not have one person give an opinion as to her suitability for passing our field training program. After that 4 months, she went into the shadow program, which is where she's put out into a squad car on her own, and then the officer goes with her on every call that she handles. That was for another 2 weeks, and then we're here now where she's actually out on patrol on her own. She will eventually be assigned to the midnight shift. That is just a product of our seniority, the way the department operates. However, right now, we have her rotating between days and 3 to 11 so that she can get the most experience she can on the shifts that have the higher volume of calls, so that when she actually ends up on midnights, some of the boredom that might come along with a shift that is not as busy as 3 to 11s or the day shift, she'll know how to handle calls from those shifts. She's had very positive reviews from the field training officers. And, you know, this is a big moment for us as a village, I think us as a police department, and Tammy and her family. She is the first female full-time police officer in the history of the Riverside Police Department. Tammy currently lives in Lansing, a long drive. Won't be so bad on midnights. She has a bachelor's degree from Purdue University Calumet. She graduated from there with high honors. She is fluent in Spanish, and I know that because our neighboring jurisdictions are constantly calling her to come over and translate at different arrest situations. She has received many distinguished awards through her high school and college career. Some of them are, she was a National Criminal Justice Honor Society, the Political Science Honor Society. She graduated with a 3.86 grade point average, and she was very impressive during her oral interviews. As you know, the Police and Fire Board here conducts the oral interviews. I'm not personally involved in that. I sit in the back. So our commissioners are the ones that put the list together after you take the written, the practical, and then the oral part of that examination. I called them this evening to let them know that Tammy would be sworn in tonight, and they were very pleased by that. I called each commissioner. And during the process, you know, there's always some unfamiliarity with the first female officer. Despite what you may think, we do have a female locker room because we have full-time communications officers. So Tammy does have a locker in a female locker room. But she's already fit into the shifts, and the officers have already, she's just one of the officers. She's not a female police officer. She's just a Riverside police officer. I think you can see some of her colleagues are here. She's already respected. She's already out there. She's extremely aggressive, but she's professionally aggressive. And her talents will serve our village well. Long after my tenure here, I believe that Tammy will find this to be a very professional agency, a village where the residents support public safety. Our elected officials and village manager support public safety. In return, they just expect us to be professional law enforcement officers, and we deliver that every day, and I'm confident that Tammy will continue. She's already done that, but she'll continue to do that. So without saying much more right now, I'd like to ask Tammy to come up. I'd like her to at least introduce her family and have them stand. I would acknowledge that her uncle is here, and he is the police chief in Lansing, Illinois, and he is here somewhere. So he made the trek all the way down here, so she has a law enforcement background. So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged him. But Tammy, if you'd come up and if you could address the board, and if you want to introduce your family, please do so.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. It really means a lot to me. I have a very large family, as you can see. These are my parents, Debbie and Kevin Terpstra, And all of my siblings except for one were missing how old is he, 20? 19? I forget. So this is my brother Kevin, David, Kara, Lydia, Megan, Emily. This is my grandma. My husband is standing in the back there. And then my mother-in-law is right there, and her mother-in-law, my Grandma Marcy. My grandpa's here too. He's standing back there. And then, yeah, like Chief already said, my uncle and his wife Carrie are back there as well. So I think that covers everyone that came. If I missed someone, then step forward, I guess. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone, especially my husband, who put up with me leaving for academy 2 weeks after we got married. And my family, who's supported me a lot through this. So thank you.
I will tell you that Tammy did get married. Her honeymoon was just before going to the State Police Academy. She's not joking. And I think they went to Disney World or Disneyland. Yeah, so, and then you had to go to the Police Academy. What a change. Does the board have any questions before we end Tammy's swearing in? Trustees?
Congratulations, and we'd like to shake her hand.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, officer. Good job.
Congrats, John. You're safe, right?
Thank you. You're very welcome. I guess the only thing I would just add in terms of what Chief Weitzel just said, we are extremely proud of our police department, from the command structure all the way down through our sworn officers to the communications folks. We're blessed here in Riverside to have an extremely professional police force. We're proud of all of our officers, but I have to say it's really nice to see that glass ceiling finally broken. Thank you, Chief. Next up is public comment. Would anyone like to address the board before we move forward? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of village officers. First up is the village president's report. I'm pleased tonight to ask for a motion to appoint Patricia Baum to the Preservation Commission to fill a vacancy. So I'd ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Ms. Hamilton. Any discussion? I would just add, you all have before you the volunteer application of Ms. Baum. She has an exceptional background. She has a master's degree in historic preservation from the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, and is very well versed in precisely the kind of things that she'll be doing on the Preservation Commission. So we're very lucky to have her, and I appreciate her service. So I'd ask our village clerk to, oh, sure.
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Holland.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
And let that be a lesson to the Boy Scouts that you have to vote in a democracy before something happens. So now I would ask the village clerk to please swear in Ms. Baum.
So raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Patricia Baum, do solemnly swear
I, Patricia Baum, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the Office of Preservation Commissioner
of the Office of Preservation Commissioner
for the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
for the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Next up is the village manager's report. Ms. Francis.
Just have a couple of quick items. I'm pleased to announce that I've selected a new finance director. It is Marco Salinas. Marco has been in the role of interim finance director since September of last year. He has served the village in the capacity of village accountant for the past 12 years. During that time, he obtained his CPA designation in 2008, and prior to working in local government, Marco worked in the private sector for 4 years conducting public audits. So we're very excited, and now we begin our journey for recruiting a village accountant. Also, I wanted to provide an update with regard to the First Avenue traffic signal. The installation of the signal should be completed early April, and landscaping will tentatively be completed by the end of May. Additionally, the next winter's farmers market will be on April 1st, which is the first Wednesday of April, from 2 to 3. And I just wanted to note that the winter markets have been well received and well attended by our community this year. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. And yes, sir.
The driving along First Avenue, I noticed that they have the signs up, but they do not have a school zone sign, which I thought was part of the IDOT was going to put up school. You know, you're entering a school zone somewhere along First Avenue. There isn't one up. Can you?
We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Mr. Follett.
I think we were supposed to also get speed indicators.
Okay, moving on, next up is the approval of consent agenda. Are there any items that any trustee would need to have removed for discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Ms. Collins. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton. Aye. Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Gallery.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Motion carries. And now we're going to take just a brief break while our Boy Scouts leave us for the evening. So thank you for coming tonight. I hope you learned a little bit of something. You're welcome. You're very welcome.
They're going to get the you should stay for the cement discussion.
Yeah. They really want to know what village board
Yeah.
work is like.
They got off easy. Yeah.
All righty. You're welcome. So moving on, next up are the reports of departments, commissions, and trustee liaisons. Let me ask first, are there any liaison reports from any of the trustees before we get into the...
I
Yes.
just want to say one thing. The Economic Development Commission has been working on getting the RFP together for the marketing plan, and we'll probably be bringing that to the board next month, is what they're thinking. So
Excellent.
we'll be prepared to have that.
You know, along those lines, maybe I should just, I attended the Safe Environment Commission the other evening to talk about some of the programming they've been doing. They've had a number of really popular and well-attended educational programs. But I also just wanted to pass along to the residents who might be watching. The Safe Environment Commission is really kind of the first line. If you have questions or concerns about things that relate to safety or to kind of the general welfare of the village, that's the place to go. So you would want to watch for their meetings, and if you have something you'd like to bring up to them, I encourage you to take it to the Safe Environment Commission. They'll meet with you, and then they will report back to the board. So, Mr. Valerie.
I'd also like to welcome to the cable staff Joe Doria. He's a Riverside resident. He was out there, I don't know if he still is, but he's our new production supervisor, comes to us with a lot of experience, has done production for History Channel and quite a few different things. So he'll be working with the PAs and the cable. And here's Joe. Joe, could you just tell us a little bit about your background? And
How many hours do you have? My professional background is, my whole career has been in television and film. I've produced shows for the History Channel. I've produced hundreds of television commercials for national advertisers. And I've also done a couple of feature films years ago when I was younger. Currently, I'm still in the production And as a producer, we basically hire everybody for the film or the project. We hire all the vendors, we manage it, and then we manage all the finances for it, and then actualize it after the job is over. So there's quite a bit that happens within that particular position. But I've taken crews to Greece, Italy, Mexico, Canada, Japan, and done stuff internationally. Most of that's been through History Channel. And I've been in Riverside for 17 years now. So that's the brief part of it.
Well, welcome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's nice to have you aboard.
Thank you for coming aboard.
Thank you.
What you teach these PAs will be wonderful.
Well, I'm very impressed with their level of expertise to begin with, and hopefully between the group now as it stands, we'll do bigger and better things for Riverside. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the commission front? Okay, moving on then, we have the reports of our departments and commissions. I'd ask Chief Weitzel to step up. He has an update on the board of the police department's video surveillance study and also the 2014 Wedge year-end report. Chief Weitzel.
Yes, Mr. President and Board of Trustees, if you remember in 2014, you asked me to look into once the video camera system was not installed, gone forward with the actual cameras, to look at a survey of businesses in town that may have outside cameras, and also to meet with our Safe Environment Commission chairperson, which I did. So I utilized the services of the village manager's intern, who did about 80% of the legwork that is involved in this. Cecilia did, and she actually put together a Excel sheet that has every business in town, whether they have a camera system, what the system is, how long it stores the video, and will they be available to give that to the police. I didn't include that in the packet because a lot of the businesses don't want that made public. But what I can say is there were over 85 businesses that she either went to personally, or the ones that she couldn't get a hold of, she mailed out surveys. And of those, we found that 17 businesses, about 20% of the businesses have outside cameras. A lot more have inside cameras. I want to make that clear. There's a lot more in town. But we were looking for cameras that could get a database. So if there was a crime committed, say right in the center of town and the car was fleeing east on Burlington or Quincy, what business our detective could go to pull up a list that we would know would have outside cameras. So that list has been put into an Excel sheet, has been installed on the detective's computer, and has been installed on the sergeant's computer in case they would need to access that when the detective was off. And it is a tool now that they can go to and utilize, and all of those 17 businesses said they would allow us to retrieve the video and help us retrieve the video, even with their own IT company if that's what need be. And then I also had breakfast with Marty, chairperson of the Safe Environment Commission. And she was actually very helpful. She has great experience in cameras because as her position of Director of Public Safety at Columbia College, she deals directly with the City of Chicago and the Chicago Police Department's liaison to the campus police for video systems. And her college has put in those types of systems. So she gave me some good data and some good information, especially for future budget seasons going ahead, that projects that we could work on and maybe some grants that would be available in the future. And that she would be willing to assist the department on if we needed her expertise, such as the grant expertise. So we do have the data. It is put on the computer, and now at least the detective can go look up, and maybe we could get a description of a car or a person that fled the scene. So there are also businesses on Harlem. So anyone that had an outside camera basically gave us, I was surprised that we don't have that many that have outside cameras, but also that's probably a good thing. So, some of the people don't have cameras because they haven't experienced crime. So they don't want to make that investment. That's my update. I could answer any questions you may have of that.
Questions on this matter? Not sure by the intern.
And I wanted to just brief you on the Wedge report because we made it public last week, and what I mean by that is gave it to the other municipalities, and I serve as the chairperson, so I wanted to brief my board on that. The wedge report was distributed to all the chiefs, which are 10 municipalities that are currently in wedge, and they were free to discuss it with their village boards or post it on their web pages. Just to give you a short summary, the wedge unit, which is a gang and drug task force, operates 4 days a month, sometimes 6 days a month in the summer for municipalities that have festivals and need maybe have some problems in the larger communities. Right now, though, it's 4 days a month. Each town provides an officer or two. So you basically have anywhere from 15 to 20 tactical officers working these operations. And we do have operations. They're planned out. They go out. This isn't a patrol force. This is a group of tactical officers that are out there on specific missions. Some of the stats for 2014 are they had 75 felony arrests, 49 misdemeanor arrests, 35 warrant arrests, 456 documented gang contacts. That's within all 10 communities. And we had 50 operational days. And the co-chairman is Chief Jim Ryan from Forest Park. And he's been a great help to me. And Jim is actually retiring in May. But when you look at the report, what you'll see is that what's happening is the gang members that are coming to prey on our communities, they're coming here because of the vulnerability of our communities. Majority of the people you see depicted in the wedge report have Chicago addresses, but they're coming here to either try to set up narcotics operations, or what we found this year is the gang members are willing to do any crime to get money. Classic example is they were making retail theft arrests in Forest Park and North Riverside on gang members who gave us specific information that they're coming here to steal the proceeds to get money and then support their drug habits or their drug operations. Some of those based in the wedge communities. They were committing residential burglaries to target high-end items that they can easily pawn and get cash from. And there isn't a single community that doesn't have an arrest listed in here. So all 10 communities had operations in their villages, including Riverside in 2014. It's a very active unit. I serve as the chairman currently. The unit was started by the Berwyn Police Department in 2008 by Chief Bill Kushner, who is now the police chief in Des Plaines. And it was his idea. He formulated it, and we're just carrying it forward. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. If not, I will post this report on the village's website probably tomorrow or early next week.
I have one question. It looks like the felony arrests have come down and the misdemeanor charges have gone up in 2014 from 2013. Is that just because of the crime, or is it because the state of Illinois has recategorized particular crimes that have changed the classifications?
It's really a product of what they call felony review. So the felony review unit, which is the state's attorney's office, any felony they must approve, and they're much more active lately. So they are really not approving felonies that are what they wouldn't call a dead bang case. So if there's any possibility that a witness won't testify on a retail theft, for example, if you're stealing from one of these malls, you better have video to show that that individual has stolen something, or the state's attorney's office probably isn't going to prosecute at that level. So it's more of a product of them screening those level of calls out than it is the fact that the reduction, because almost all the time the officers call felony review for felony approval, but they either accept or reject it based on their own criteria. Unfortunately, we just can't, Cook County doesn't allow us to look at the statutes and say, oh, that's a felony. We can just charge you with that. You have to prepare the case, call the state's attorney, and they have to approve that charge. So that's really what's happening here.
Any question? Thank you, Chief Blacksmith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is an update on the CMAP initiatives. Back in August of 2014, we kind of made the transition from a lot of the commission work that was being done on CMAP and shifted the actual implementation of these initiatives over to our various departments. And so Manager Francis is going to lead us through it.
Actually, we have various department heads that are here this evening that are going to be going through their various sections within the PowerPoint presentation. It was a collaborative effort across all departments with regard to these various initiatives. I'm very proud to say that it wasn't as though one department was solely responsible for certain items, though obviously there were certain department heads that were responsible for the initiatives. Each department has worked collaboratively, and I'm very proud of that. To begin the presentation this evening, I believe our Parks and Rec Director, Ron Melchiotti, will start.
No, me. I'm not good at inches. Good evening. I would just like to echo the statements that Village Manager Francis had said in regard to a lot of these projects encompassed more than one department. And I know for myself, it was a pleasure to work collaboratively with the other departments to accomplish some of these goals and to accomplish the future goals as well. So the first CMAP initiative was kind of all-encompassing. I will explain the piece of it that Parks and Recreation was responsible for. But the initiative was to increase recreational connection to the riverfront. Establish Indian Gardens natural areas. We are going to do this in a few ways. Internally, we obtained educational posters from IDNR. Those have been installed in the Scout Cabin. They cover a variety of various aspects of nature, anything from wildlife to trees, the river itself. These are available to anyone that is using the cabin. They'll provide educational opportunities through Parks and Recreation programming, as well as the Scout organizations that utilize the cabin for their meetings. We'll also provide valuable information to any casual observer that uses the cabin. We rent it out for a variety of uses, but that will be available for them to peruse, and it will also tie into the nature around them, so there'll be a passive educational aspect to it as well. Information will not be relegated to the interior of the cabin. President Sells actually devoted time and effort working with designer Greg Gorski to produce a historical map, which you'll see on the next slide. That map will go right into the indentation you see in the second picture. It was an old doorway. The map will be situated in there, will be secured and covered with plexiglass, so it'll be weatherproof and tamper-proof. But it will also provide anyone that does not have access to the cabin, that's just utilizing the trail or in the general area, the historical significance and reference to the Village of Riverside as a whole, including the Indian Gardens area. This draft was distributed to the Historical Commission for feedback, and that was reported back to me. Myself and designer Greg Gorski will then finalize the design and coordinate the installation. This is the current rendering. That is the first draft. This was submitted to the Historical Commission for review. There's various points of interest and significance on this map, like I said, throughout the entire town of Riverside, but also specific to the Indian Gardens and Scout Cabin areas. So this is, in its finalized form, this will be installed on the exterior of the cabin, so anyone walking in the area can recognize not only the significance of the area that they're in, but also anywhere they might walk in the area nearby. Community events. Right now, we are currently, oh, I'm sorry, I should go back one. There was one more, the plaque. We are currently in the process of obtaining quotes for a plaque that will signify and explain the history of the cabin. It was a nice tie-in with the Scouts being here tonight, because with the contribution that they made, the creation and renovation of the cabin, we feel that's something that should not only be recognized but commemorated. And we will have a plaque installed at the front door explaining the history and the dates and the significance of that creation and renovation. Community events. The two community events that we are directly involved in are the Farmers Market and Riverside Arts Weekend. Although both of these events have strong, energetic, and generous committee members, the logistics of the events have been assumed by the department to streamline village responsibilities. These events could not run without the committee volunteers who devote countless hours to organizing and creating and supervising. We're proud to support those efforts. For Riverside Arts Weekend, we perform a variety of duties. We are the liaison between village departments and the committee. So that is Public Works, that is Police and Fire, that we coordinate any street closings, all of the fencing, anything that is set up, the electrical for the event. We also are in charge of the staging, food vendors, and just general support, also security for the event. But we support the committee in their efforts throughout the entire weekend. For Farmers Market, we have assumed not only logistic duties, but also processing duties. So we make sure that all of the vendors not only have their certificate of insurance to provide to the village, but we also work with the Cook County Health Department to make sure that they have all their paperwork in order, that they are licensed and certified, so that they can participate in our market. Once that is set, the actual logistics of the market, so setup, tear down, supervision of the event, and any support during, we provide that throughout the 11 months of the farmers market, including the winter market. Increase the number of community events. In addition to, we've also enhanced many of our existing events. The biggest contribution this year will be to our kids' triathlon. We are now opening that up to adults this year. So while we are interested in adding the number of community events, we're also very cognizant of enhancing and increasing the existing events we have. The two that we were involved in adding were a night at Ravinia. Again, President Sells was very instrumental in the formation of this event, pun intended. It is our additional concert in the park at Guthrie, and this allows us to, where the July 3rd concert, we have to appeal to the widest audience possible. This additional concert not only provides the public another way to gather as a community and socialize, but it also allows us to explore more specialized genres of music, and also, again, work with local vendors to provide food and anything that would tie in with the specific genre. The Riverside Ride, I actually had a meeting today with EDC Representative Keith Plummer. I've also dealt with Jack Buccio in the creation of this event. This was an event that we actually created last year. Unbeknownst to us at the time, we were not prepared for snow on October 4th, so the event was canceled. But the framework was there. It was a very supported event. We had a lot of participation from local businesses. And the idea behind this event is to not only promote tourism and enhance the biking opportunities and awareness in the town, but also showcase the businesses in the Central Business District. We utilize the green parking lot. We may also utilize this year the St. Mary's parking lot. So all of the activities, it will involve a police escorted loop around the side streets of Riverside. All of that will culminate at the parking lot, where we'll have various activities for the children, bike safety, and also allow local businesses to work on, they'll be there promoting their businesses, and also an opportunity for community outreach. Our police department is also involved in that, not only with the escort, but providing bike safety and also having officers there for community outreach. And I will turn it over, Ed, if anyone has any questions for me.
And maybe it's easier if you have questions for the individual departments, why don't we just ask them as we go along? Anybody with regard to Parks and Rec?
Any plans of doing any events in the river, like a canoe race or canoe rentals, or,
Triathlon.
I'm not swimming in the river.
Right. We actually have discussed it. The biggest issue with that is depth of the river, conditions around the river. Anytime we plan an event, there's so many variables, weather being the biggest one of them. So that is something we've actually talked about. We have not planned it as of yet. We still plan on having our regular canoe trips, but as far as a river event, we've talked about having vendors come out doing kayak and canoe safety, and then doing some, some skills like maybe around the Swan Pond area. And so we have talked about that, but nothing is planned as of yet.
Will that map that you developed be in the visitor center too, or just at the scout cabin?
Right now, the only plan is to have it at the scout cabin to designate that area, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to having that in the visitor center as well, because it does represent all of Riverside.
Nice work, thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice work.
The item I'm going to report on tonight is to make the Central Business District and Village easier to visit and explore. And it's under infrastructure initiatives. And it's really focused on just the cold, hard infrastructure items like sidewalk and streets. During 2014, 10,000 square feet of sidewalk was replaced. Over 1,000 lineal feet of trip hazards were saw cut, and a significant amount of thermoplastic pavement markings were installed. Crosswalk stop bars and center lines, but with a focus on the central business district and school zones. This photo here is taken along North Delaplane Avenue, or North Delaplane Road, and it has good representation of sidewalk squares that have been replaced and saw cutting really between the two squares that have been replaced or saw cutting. That happens to be this red granite type sidewalk. It didn't necessarily show up in the photograph. But certainly these types of improvements are important to not only for the residents but for visitors to make their visit to Riverside safe. And it improves the aesthetic of the community when the sidewalks are not out of kilter, and same with what we'll see with these street markings here. This is from Forest Avenue looking towards the Central Business District. The pavement markings have not received a real good washing from rain yet, and they would be more brilliant if that had happened. But this pavement marking project was really a departure from painted pavement markings that might last 3 months or so. These thermoplastic pavement markings should last 3 to 5 years. They're obviously much more bold. And in this particular case, one of the things I wanted to highlight was the crosswalk. That's one of the things I focused on with the last program, and that's certainly important to help people cross streets safely and let motorists know that there is a potential for a pedestrian in the street. This coming year, 2015, that we're in, we'll see a significant increase in pavement markings with the street improvement projects that we have. And then there's also money budgeted in this fiscal year for both pavement markings and $100,000 for sidewalk replacement. I'm hoping to place a stronger emphasis on Central Business District sidewalks, especially those that have subsided. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the concrete, it's sound, but they've subsided and created significant trip hazards. It's much less expensive also to slabjack those or mudjack those than to replace them. So that's a significant focus I want to use on this upcoming sidewalk program.
Any questions for Mr. Bailey? Mr. Kaufman?
Ed, what is just a normal size of one of our squares? Are they 4 by 5?
5 by 5.
Are they 5 by 5? Okay.
They can vary significantly. They tend to be somewhat larger, especially if you're going along Common Road, for instance. They're maybe 7 feet square. But I think even by ordinance, they're supposed to be 5 feet square.
When was the picture taken of the sidewalk on the, that you showed? Today?
Or, I think today, yeah, right.
Thanks.
Questions?
Well, maybe not the most important thing my department will be working on, but certainly my favorite is this next section here where we're increasing the connection to the riverfront, restoring the habitat. The village forester is here to go into further detail in that, but it's really a great project for the department.
Thanks for that introduction, Ed. President Sells, trustees, village manager Francis, thanks for the invitation tonight to address you regarding some of the progress that we've made along the river in terms of opening up our views and trying to forge a path through the wilderness here, or the village and the forest. Just to start things out, my primary focus has been the natural areas along the Des Plaines. As part of the CMAP recommendations or initiatives, we're looking at riverfront openings. As you may have noticed, you can now see the river when you're driving along Riverside Road. We've done extensive work there. Blooming Bank Road, we've done a very small opening that we're going to approach as an experimental opening due to the proximity to First Avenue. We've also done some openings along Indian Gardens and Scout Cabin as well. Going back to Indian Gardens, we've done significant work in regards to restoring a path that was once a very narrow footpath. We've widened that and done quite a bit of work. We've also done a little bit of work on Blooming Bank as well. And just to let you know, I'm kind of giving you a very brief overview, and I do have a lot of pictures, and I'll get into more specifics as we move along. But really, this is all a part of what I would refer to as an ecological restoration within Riverside. To me, this is something very near and dear to my heart as a forester. It's something I got into this business to do. And what we've done in terms of these openings and working on this path is applied a lot of these principles of restoration, invasive species control, removing buckthorn, alien plants that really aren't native to our landscape. We've also removed a lot of ash. As you know, with emerald ash borer, our ash trees are in decline or dying. So in the case of the paths, we were concerned about some safety for residents who will use the path, so that was also addressed. Also, you know, with ecological restoration, we're looking at incorporating controlled burns or prescription burns to reintroduce processes that basically help native plants evolve and will help sort of reduce the incidence of invasive plants. So we have our hands full. We'll also be looking at some planting and seeding opportunities. What we're trying to do is bring in some native plants and establish these processes to get a balance in the community. And also in that process, opening up that river so that the residents can access and also utilize, from a recreational standpoint, the Des Plaines River. So with that in mind, moving forward, here's a picture of Riverside Road. This is a before shot. You can see it's fall time, but yet we have these interesting green plants that are colonizing our riverbanks that would essentially be buckthorn. You can see some natives with fall color. That's really a great time of year to do this work. Buckthorn really sticks out quite a bit. So as you can see, we went through and removed the buckthorn, which will also provide opportunities for oak regeneration, also planting some sedges and stuff of that nature to help promote controlled burns, further favoring those natives. You know, again, our historic swinging bridge. What swinging bridge, you say? Well, there it is. Getting rid of a lot of those invasives really opens up our vistas and views to the river. And it's something really personally I'm very excited about. It's really letting a forester go out and play in the woods, so I appreciate that. And then here you can see a chinkapin oak in the forefront, very small diameter tree. And then in the back you see the buckthorn all lit up and colonized, choking out all of that native vegetation. Actually, buckthorn outcompetes a lot of our native vegetation in the way that it stays green longer, has a longer growing season. So once it hits the saw, there's no opportunity after that. But you can see how well you can then see the vista and it should provide much better access for our residents to utilize these areas moving forward. Going over to Blooming Bank Road, you can see that poor little hydrant buried in invasive plants growing all the way out to the curb line. Well, one of the issues along the First Division here is if you're going to walk the riverbank, you actually need to hop over to the sidewalk side unless you want to be beaten by vegetation or break out a machete. So you can see what we did here is push back the vegetation, mainly removing invasives and the occasional native, making about an 8-foot swath where now the residents don't even need to move over to the parkway side. They can just keep enjoying their stroll along the river, helping to tie in a corridor that will allow people, visitors and residents alike, to enjoy that river in a leisurely stroll. This is also along Blooming Bank Road. You can see that same wall of invasive plants. As you can see, we have our work cut out for us, right? But afterwards, we come in and clear. It's not completely open. I'm a little more selective in this site due to the close proximity of First Avenue. We don't want to open it up so much that the residents are now watching traffic from their front yards every day. But we do want to remove those invasives, and you can see off to the left there's some small saplings coming in with red foliage, fall color. Those would actually be red oaks growing up, so we're freeing the native vegetation to colonize and spread while discouraging the invasives once again. Indian Gardens, this actually is a picture of the path. This is after we mowed it, so this is actually better than where we started in August from where we sort of developed these initiatives. But you can see again the invasives, the underbrush, mainly buckthorn, and then there's also a dead ash tree to the right of the path there. And you can see how much we've opened up that riverbank, kept some of the native vegetation, and then also removed that underbrush. Much easier for yourselves to walk down the path and enjoy the river, so to speak. Again, tying in that corridor that we're trying to develop around First Avenue, or First Division there. Here we have some green dots on trees. Those would be ash trees that are dying within proximity of the path. Just to let the board know as well, we are removing these dead ash trees for safety primarily, but we are also leaving some ash trees that are in the woodlands further away from the path where we're not worried about them falling into the path, mainly to keep them for wildlife, provide nesting and cavity sites for animals. So we're not only addressing concerns or trying to make it user-friendly for our residents, but also our other little inhabitants, so to speak. But you can see how much it opens the area up, and I'm hoping to do some planting to see how well we could get some better oak regeneration. Question?
If you leave those ash trees, does it make any difference to contagion or anything like that?
Not really. With emerald ash borer, it's a fairly aggressive pest, and if your tree has it, chances are every tree within several miles have it. So, and they're usually, it builds as a population in the way of an insect. It's very different from the Dutch elms disease where we would sanitize one and then save the neighbor, so to speak. This is pretty much, if you have it in your community, it's pretty much everywhere. So, and you can now see the backstop. It's opened things up quite a bit. Scout Cabin, you can see a meager footpath. We removed, again, some more ash and the invasive underbrush. Definitely much more accessible. We'll be planning to do some controlled burns here this spring, hoping that weather and time permits. If not, there's always the fall. And then you can see the gravel driveway at the Scout Cabin. Again, came in and removed a lot of the invasives, and we're hoping to do more burns, foster those natives. You know, really this is a project to me that is very exciting. I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. And, you know, I'd like to thank President Sells, Board of Trustees, and Village Manager Francis for your leadership and support and providing the resources to get this started. I am in the process of finalizing a restoration plan, a comprehensive plan for all the areas around the river. You know, this will definitely be a long-term commitment, but I think it's a noble and admirable cause. You know, we should be stewards of our landscape, and, you know, being a historic landscape, I think we should be leading in that regard as opposed to following from behind. So on that note, I'd open it up to any questions.
Mike, I think you did a great job. This past weekend, I had a chance to be on the river in a canoe. The view from the river back at the town is beautiful.
Good shop for real estate, huh?
Really good. And my question is, are you going down to the bank with some of the trees that are just clearly dead and are looking like they're ready to fall or could fall?
Well, it kind of depends on the lean of the tree. In most cases, I'd prefer to keep those trees as nesting trees. So that would be my approach, but we are removing the smaller saplings, especially the invasives, and trying to favor that oak regeneration. We've done a little bit of research relating to pre-settlement conditions, and granted, it's almost impossible to have a goal for restoration that would turn things back to European settlement. Obviously, those days are gone, and the flow of the river, hydrology, many things have been altered, development, but you know, the long-term goal is adaptive management, and I think, you know, in terms of those trees, we'd like to keep them where we can, provided the public is ensured safe passage.
You've done a great job along the river, and but I'd also, you know, like to recognize the Olmsted Society, because they've done along Riverside Drive. They're out there all the time during the fall. So it's great having the volunteer effort that you have out there.
It really makes quite a difference. You know, I mean, it took, I think we started with the Olmsted Society back in 2009 and had you know, a few work days here, a few work days there. That basically started the opening that went from Olmsted all the way down to Gage. And I really consider that to be a test pilot, and it's, you know, it was really a very rewarding experience. And then, you know, with the village taking lead and putting those resources in, we were able to clear the entire rest of Riverside Road in about a week and a half, so. It helps, but it's a pretty tenacious plant. So again, it's a long-term commitment, and a big part of that would be monitoring. You know, we will have, there's probably more buckthorn seed in that soil than I would care to know right now, because it would be fairly depressing and discouraging. But, you know, it does help kill off some of the smaller saplings, and a key portion of that is getting a lot of native plants and sedges to foster that fire and increase that heat, so that it'll kill off that seed in the seed bank and favor those natives that are very well adapted to fire.
Any comments? I guess I would just like to echo it. I mean, to see that what you've accomplished in just 6 months is extraordinary. And I guess I kind of agree with Director Bailey. I mean, a lot of these projects are very exciting, but there are certain ones that kind of touch the heart and soul a little bit more, and seeing what you've been able to accomplish and bringing our river back to us is extraordinary. And I really appreciate it. I'm very proud of what you and the Public Works Department has done.
Well, thank you. And it's really a testament to the board, because without the resources, it wouldn't be possible.
Thanks, Mike.
I appreciate your leadership.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Apt?
Now for the less exciting parts, I guess.
No.
Yes.
Nature and nurture, right?
Alrighty. I've got a few things to go over. First one being the government initiatives. We start with the updating the sign ordinance for businesses. This is an ongoing initiative. We spent many, many months going through the sign ordinance, and hopefully we will not be spending too many more months getting on with the sign ordinance. I hope to have a draft before you next month for your consideration. So Attorney Mars and I are working through that. I had a lot of help from the Planning and Zoning Commission for a few months on that, and then had the pleasure of working with you guys for many months on that. So the journey continues. Marketing storefront opportunities is another initiative that fell under the Community Development Department. I have outreached to some prospective businesses. I'm working with meeting some of our local businesses that we have, to just trying to get an idea of how things are going and how the village can partner with them to help them succeed. In addition, we've been working on some marketing materials for the village. The village in turn has been very helpful in that. I do have a couple of the packets that we've put together there for you guys to look at. We've targeted the Village Center and the Arcade Building because they seem to have our largest vacancies, so we created a flyer for those to be able to provide information about the village and that space that's available. The other thing that we've been talking about with the EDC has been how to deal with the vacant storefronts. So they are considering some options on what we can do to try to activate those spaces and make them a little bit better. And that does seem to be a popular thing right now that a lot of communities are trying to do is dealing with making that a little bit more pleasant so it's not such a negative impact on your downtown or whatever business district that it's in. So here are some examples of some storefront screenings for vacant spaces that other communities have done. Also been working on some how-to manuals for prospective businesses that I'm trying to figure out how to get posted onto our website. And then I've been working with the intern and manager Francis on trying to create a business portal. So we'll do what we can with the website that we have, and then hopefully as we move forward with updating the village's website, it'll be able to be a little bit more robust tool for our current businesses and prospective businesses and our property owners to be able to use. Another initiative would be improving our central business district streetscape. The big thing we have going right now is obviously the Burlington Streetscape Project, which we received the grant funding for. Here are some of the renderings for the corner of the streets, Long Common and Burlington, so you can kind of get an idea of what this will look like once everything is installed. We've been moving forward. We had an extensive public comment and review commission process and going over this design. And we have actually submitted to the state. We're in process. We just resubmitted our final plans on Monday. So hopefully, provided nothing bad happens, everything is going to keep continuing down the line, that we will go out for letting in June so construction can begin in August. So this is kind of the overall streetscape plan. It's pretty much evolved a little bit since December, January, with a few changes that have had to be made. But for the most part, the big thing that disappeared was the improvement to the alley between the two buildings of the Pilates and the and Diana's. So other than that, it's still pretty much the same plan. Actually, our village forester has been helping with that plan too, as we've been trying to come up with the planting plans and tree selection and stuff for that. So he's been very involved in the process for this as well. We also have our visitor center. Part of the CMAP initiative was to try and create a visitor center. So the EDC kind of took this under their wing in the summertime as I kind of came on board. So they've taken over the North Pavilion there and created a visitor center. The EDC had a work day out there and cleared out a lot of the brush that was there on the north side of the pavilion, installed some new landscaping. They painted the inside. We've gotten new lights installed in there and put in some posters and a cabinet. It's still evolving. We're still working, trying to come up with some finalized posters, informational items to be putting in there, and are trying to put together different materials that we can provide in there to let people know what there is to be doing in Riverside, like a dining guide, things like that. And then the cabinet that you see there in the lower left-hand corner was donated by the Chamber of Commerce, so that's there for them to put in their different advertisements and to allow the different businesses in town to be able to advertise what's going on in there. Hasn't been utilized a lot since the holiday stroll, but is my understanding that they're trying to work that into the rotation of putting things in there and try to remind them that they have that opportunity to advertise in that. So that is, I think, let's see the plantings. That's about it for the Community Development Department.
Questions from Ms. App?
The alley in the streetscape, that's taken out from the ownership of the property.
It was also taken out because part of the problem was that there is a prescriptive right to that alley access to the street, so we wouldn't be able to cut off that access. So the planter that was planned for there has been shifted over a little bit. We'll still be doing, obviously, the sidewalk improvements there, but we still have to provide that access to the street since there is only one access point for those businesses in the rear to get out, so. Oh, yes, we did, they asked to see the latest plans that we had submitted, and so I had provided them with the pre-final plans that we had submitted to IDOT, and I got comments back from them on Monday, which was the due date for our final plans. So I kind of went over some of the comments with the landscape architect to kind of see what we could accommodate and what we couldn't accommodate, and so we're kind of working through some of those comments to see what we can do. Most of the major changes that were brought up in there would be things that would require a change order, so I think we're going to have to be selective about how we can incorporate some of those comments in there. But yes.
So did you want to comment on the sustainability portion?
Oh, yes. For sustainability, I think, obviously a lot of the things are in providing sustainability, especially with the natural areas, things that we're doing. But specifically with the streetscape project, we're doing permeable paving in there to try to reduce the amount of runoff that's going to be going into our combined sewer system. So there's the permeable pavers that are a part of that. We're going to be doing an irrigation system using LED lights in the uplighting that are in the planters. Obviously, there's trying to use as many native plants as possible for the planters, and with the tree selection that Mike recommended to them. In addition, with the visitor center, we did use LED lights that we installed in there. So,
Director Bailey, I think you're looking into that potential too, is in terms of using some of the LED lights in some of our downtown lighting.
Yeah, that's actually lighting in general in all public facilities. I'm really keenly interested in converting to LED lights as soon as practical and as soon as possible. Certainly, we should have an opportunity to convert the existing CBD electric lights to LED. They're currently 100-watt mercury vapor bulbs that include a ballast. We should be able to replace them. We have one installed right now that's a 22-watt bulb. It's an LED bulb at the east end of the train depot. And that by itself would represent significant energy savings, just going from a 100-watt bulb to a 22-watt bulb. We're going to use or experiment with a couple different wattages to see what seems to work best and what provides the appropriate light level. But in buildings, this is a township office, but we're also experimenting with, instead of a 4-foot fluorescent tube that is also now available in an LED light. They consume less energy, they don't generate hazardous waste, and from a operational standpoint, they're a lot less expensive to maintain, because it is, I believe, quite expensive to change light bulbs. I have to send a person, disrupt our normal operations, send a person that makes maybe, probably over $50 an hour with wages and benefits to change a light bulb. The less we do that, the more we can do other things. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of initiatives that we can pursue across the board, and as we have time and opportunities, we do pursue them.
Thank you. Just on a kind of a little bit broader scale too, with regard to the sustainability, I know that Manager Francis has been working with our village engineer in terms of stormwater management. I had a meeting a couple weeks ago with Deborah Shore, who is Water Reclamation District Commissioner, about some of the possibilities we might have as a community to partner with the kind of work that they're doing. So that's a potential that's out there as well. And also we've asked our village engineer to revisit on kind of a longer time frame cost analysis of the feasibility of using pervious pavers in more of our village-wide parking lots. So this sustainability component is something really that weaves through from the forestry to the infrastructure to the public facilities, all the way through our village, and I'm really excited to see that our department heads and of course our village manager have embraced it. Any other questions for the department heads before we? I guess the only thing that I would like to say is how you have in front of you a comprehensive listing of the initiatives and how much work has been done just since last August. And it really is a testament to our village staff and to our village manager, the level of cooperation and more importantly, the excitement and the sense of dedication that I'm really sensing is really a wonderful thing to see. The village is truly moving forward. But I would just like to interject a point of concern, because we've just had this wonderful presentation. We're getting ready to move on now to talk about the most mundane of things, zero-turn mowers and utility vehicles. The kind of things that you just saw represented that we're doing, which is critical to the life and spirit of a village, and the kind of capital needs that we're getting ready to talk about are precisely what the local government distributive fund is intended to fund. That is precisely the money that Governor Rauner's proposal would take away from Riverside and other communities. I have been to several meetings now where we have been asked by the state senators and state representatives, what would you buy with the local government distributive fund? Well, you're seeing what we buy with it. The notion that we have reserves that we're setting on, the reserves are what we use to buy these zero-turn mowers and these utility vehicles and do the forestry and do the infrastructure and do the work on the ground of running a village. So I just encourage everyone who's listening and watching tonight to be alert to this really serious challenge to the well-being not only of Riverside but of communities all across Illinois. It could be a truly crippling blow to our local villages and towns. So with that said, any other comments about the CMAP? Anything else in the memo that's before you that you'd like to ask Manager Francis or I? Great job, Manager Francis, and thank you to all of our department heads. And you can actually walk all the way around the river now for the first time since I've lived here for almost 30 years. It's extraordinary. So moving on now to the nuts and bolts. We have up first a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract with Schrader & Schrader for the 2015 sidewalk replacement program in an amount not to exceed $80,000. Mr. Bailey.
I can probably explain a bit. What's really before you is an opportunity to renew the existing, or the 2014 contract, which includes the pricing with Schroeder & Schroeder for 2015. In your packet was a letter from Schroeder & Schroeder indicating that they think that concrete prices are going up 20% this year. And the original contract, and again, we have this mutual purchasing program with 3 other communities, provided for a renewal option. So we're really exercising that renewal option. Last year, the village spent about $72,000 for sidewalk replacement. The balance of the $100,000 capital budget item was spent on trip hazards, saw cutting. So I propose a not to exceed amount of $72,000 for sidewalk replacement during 2015. But like I mentioned earlier in the CMAP presentation, I really think it's important to try to work on improving the central business district sidewalks that have subsided. A good example would be on Quincy Street. There's significant areas of subsided concrete that's perfectly sound that I would like to try to raise through slab jacking. $2.75 a square foot last year to do that, so it's economical. So I don't, going forward here, I don't think that I would plan to spend $80,000 or even $72,000 on sidewalk replacement, because we also have the trip hazard element. And then, like I say, I want to carve out some of that money for slab raising. But we had to put a certain amount in the resolution from a purchasing standpoint, to create a purchase order. So it's a not to exceed amount of $80,000. So really the only issue before you tonight, as far as this item goes, as far as I'm concerned, is whether or not you want to renew the agreement with Schroeder and Schroeder for 2015 at the 2014 prices.
Renew the contract.
Motion by Mr. Valerie,
Second.
second by Mr. Foley. Any further questions?
Yeah. I would just like to review, we voted on this in the fall, right?
No, it was
In the
earlier in
summer?
the year. Yeah, it was
And
like this.
I know that I was one of the few proponents of the aggregate concrete, but actually, Ed, I don't know if you deliberately or not supplied pictures that illustrate the difference in the colors and how striking some of the color differences are. I don't think you did it on purpose, but I do appreciate you doing it. And I think at the time, if I recall correctly, at the time that we had this conversation, we said we would, again, at the time that we voted on this the first time, we said we would again look at the aggregate. And I want to go on the record as, and if it takes voting against this, I will, as not being in favor of continuing the program that we have. I think these color differences are not minimal. I think they're strikingly different, and I don't know if it's Schroeder. I don't know if it's because there's some dye that can be, Mike, I know you gave me 101 and 102 and 110 introduction to cement. But I'm just telling you, but I'm just saying that I'm opposed to this.
It's new concrete, Gene. That's 6 months old. Look at this stuff.
I don't want to wait 10 years to see this subside.
You know what? I did some, I wanted to know what the square footage of a square was. And let's say we're gonna budget 80,000, but probably only gonna spend 72 on squares and the rest on mud jacking and
50, 60.
whatever. So, I mean, if we go to exposed aggregate, we'll get 311 squares. If we stay with the same program, we'll get 426. You're talking about almost 800 lineal more feet of sidewalk.
I am.
You know,
I think it's a case of being penny wise and pound foolish, and it's my opinion, Mike. And
you know
I
what?
also, Jessica, I don't think you passed out the letter from Charlie, did you?
I don't think.
Oh, you did, okay, yeah.
We know that, Ed, we have over, when you had the study done, you found that we had 3,300 squares that were roughly hazards. We know about those. We're liable for those, Gene. We know they exist. We have to get to the finish line. We have to replace them. Exposed or not, whatever, I want to get them replaced, all of them, because I don't want to have trip hazards.
That's
Not
fine,
anywhere
but
in
we
the
should
village.
allocate more money to it. I'm going on the record as being opposed to it.
But if I can
We
only
have a
throw 80
letter.
grand at it,
That's fine.
and I can get another 160 squares out of the deal.
That's fine, we'll just agree to disagree on it, Mike.
Okay.
But I am really very much opposed to it. You have a letter from.
Then have the Public Works Director look into a dyed concrete, but then the problem lies in that you get no consistency with dyed concrete.
Well, we're not getting consistency now, so that's a moot point. And I just want to make sure that people, that
And you
this is
won't get
entered into the.
consistency with exposed aggregate.
That this is the letter from Charlie, who is writing as a member of the faculty in the School of the Art Institute of the university. He's not writing in his position as chair of the Historic Preservation, but he was opposed to it the first time around. He's opposed to it this time. I just think these are perfect illustrations of what it's going to look like for years.
Well, first of all, we didn't use the linseed oil as specified that we talked about, which was supposed to dye that back a little bit. That was not applied, if I remember correctly.
We use clear curing membrane.
And we were supposed to use, or I thought we agreed upon using linseed oil.
If we did, I misunderstood.
Okay, which would take a little bit of that out. Now, you know, the discussion of exposed aggregate. Now, does exposed aggregate look less bright when it's put down new? And yes, the answer is obviously yes. But if you walk this town, and I wish Richard Ray was here, because we only put exposed aggregate into the ordinances in 1970 something. So all the sidewalks before 1970 were of some other kind of crushed concrete, granite, or something. So if you walk down Riverside Drive from Delaplane all the way to downtown, you can count the exposed aggregate. and you will find out that there's probably 3 times or 4 times more brushed concrete than there are exposed aggregate already down on the ground. Now, that picture that you put out, you had series of some lighter, and right now, I gotta tell you, when you walk down it, they're not as bright as when they were put in. So I don't believe those pictures were brand new or whatever, because I walked it just the other day just for that purpose. But there are places where you've done the sanding, where you've sanded the trip hazards. If you notice where you've sanded the trip hazards, those are bright. And then you see the concrete that is new, and those are bright. But it's the same thing. All our sidewalks are dirty concrete or aged concrete. And if you just gave them, you know, the correct amount of time, they would all eventually all look the same. And you run into patches of these exposed aggregate, and everywhere where they have these exposed aggregates, got someone throwing pebbles one way, someone throwing pebbles in. You talk about something that is completely off the books on looking like each other. That's what exposed aggregate is.
Well, then let's
Brushed
go back.
concrete is at least uniform, and when it will age uniformly.
Then let's go
Gene,
back to
I'll
adding
go.
the dye. How about adding the dye the way, did you see Charlie's letter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. What about adding the dye to the regular concrete?
That's a possibility. I've spoken with the contractor. That's not a problem. If the village wanted to go in that direction, we probably have a group that involved the village, the contractor, and the concrete supplier to go through a process of color swatches and come up with a color that was acceptable. There would be an upcharge for it. I'm not sure what it would be, but you know, there would be an extra cost. This is not surprising, associated with dyeing the concrete. I'd just like to make one comment about the photographs that I provided to you. I had no agenda. I just went out looking for some representative samples, but when I was out in Harlem, the last photographs in that series that I gave you have the least amount of contrast between the old and new. And I remembered Richard Ray testifying here last year that this concrete will get dirty, basically. Grime and dirt and whatnot will accumulate on it, and the concrete will become less dull. Well, certainly out on Harlem Avenue, along Harlem Avenue, compared to any other photographs or any other sidewalk I visited when I took those photographs, that sidewalk is dirty, dull. There's a lot of grime on it from Harlem Avenue. And that contrast already, I think, is probably dramatically less than the sidewalk that's further in town where there's less dirt accumulation on it. So I think that's probably an example of what Richard Ray was discussing, that this concrete will darken over time.
I think, my thing is that I think what the pictures reflect to me is the totally different colors that we have in town right now. Because there's some pictures like this where it looks absolutely ridiculous, and there's some like this where you can barely tell which is the concrete and which is the aggregate. And so it seems that, you know, we do have a patchwork right now. So would it be possible to decide on if we wanted to add a dye based on where it's going to be put down? So if it's a situation where the sidewalk looks like this, could we in those areas say we want to add a dye to make it a little bit less? And if it's ones where it's like this, where it's not going to make any difference, not do the dye? Is that possible?
From a technical standpoint, aggregate and dyed concrete don't hold up well to things like salt in the winter. When people go out and throw salt on their sidewalks, salt gets in the aggregate and it pops the stones out when the salt expands. It also eats the dye chemical in the concrete. So I would be, if you're looking for consistency, we know that broom concrete, you can't beat it. But if you want the stone, you want the aggregate, the only way to get consistency is to procure the amount of aggregate needed to do all the squares. Because you have to understand that from one yard to another, these vendors get this pea gravel from different sources, and it comes from different rivers in different parts of the country. So in large jobs like this, I have seen where the vendor will go out and procure all the stone to cover the entire area so that he has a consistent finish. If you're willing to do that, I'd be willing to do that. But again, I think you're going to get, if you can handle the brightness, they will dull down over time. If you look at, Jeannie stood on my driveway, it's 4 years old. It's certainly not as bright as this.
But you said it wasn't as bright as that when you was
It wasn't
put
as bright as
in,
this,
yeah,
you know, and again, concrete even has variances. If you bought your concrete from Ozinga versus Chicago, Republic, you'd have two different pours. Willie's concrete, they put more water in their concrete, they have a different pour. So even room concrete can be variable.
Yeah, and I would recommend Mike's introduction to concrete, seriously, I'm not being sarcastic. He
Yeah.
was very, very helpful when we did this. I just think that these are really striking, and Charlie, so forget my aggregate, that's okay, I'll back off on that, but, you know, Charlie offered something that would be less costly probably,
You know,
but you say it's still a
I
wear
want to know
issue.
where, you know, they didn't have this back when Olmsted was running around here. And the sidewalks that were put in, and if Richard was here, he would attest to it, they used granite dust because it's all they really had. They didn't know about this. They didn't know that they could pour concrete, come back 2 hours later and hose it off and have exposed aggregate. They didn't know about it. So this is to me not Riverside.
Well, okay, so
Granite dust
but it's the
would be.
color, so I'll let go of the exposed
It's the
aggregate.
texture, it's the color. I just.
Could you tell us about the linseed oil?
Linseed oil, we're generally working off IDOT specs, you know, when we do infrastructure. Nothing unique to Riverside. I think that's fairly common throughout, you know, the state of Illinois. IDOT has, I think, 4 curing membranes identified in their specifications for curing concrete. There's 3 chemical types, and 1 is linseed. Linseed oil, as a matter of fact, I have a spec sheet for it. It says that for a certain brand, I guess you could say, it says 28 days after the concrete is poured, that's when you would apply this linseed oil. It's more expensive to have linseed oil applied to the concrete because the contractor has to come back. The one day that they pour the concrete, they can spray the new concrete with this curing membrane, the chemical curing membrane, and be done with it. If someone wanted to use linseed oil, they would pour the concrete, finish it, go away, and according to the spec sheet I have, 28 days, no sooner than 28 days later, come back and apply linseed oil. Potentially it would have to be applied more than once, but certainly it's a accepted curing agent, you know, in a kind of mass-produced process of putting concrete down. It's all about time. You know, time is money, so they're going to want to move quickly with it.
Do you know, Ed, if they spec fiber mesh in the pour of this concrete?
No.
They don't. So we don't get fiber mesh.
No.
So if we were to spec a fiber mesh pour in lieu of doing linseed oil, it would be a wash.
I'm not sure of the cost differential, but I don't see why you couldn't add fiber mesh to it. It's, you know, it's an additive that you put in.
Then you would need the chemical binder on the back side of it.
What would the mesh do, Mike?
So fiber mesh is a strand, think of it like hair. And when the concrete truck pulls up to the job, the operator puts in 6, they're small bags, but they tear them open, they pour it in the concrete truck. They accelerate the concrete truck, mix it in. The hair actually, when the concrete cures, the hair bonds together, it holds the concrete better. It's made of fiberglass. It's just fiberglass strands.
Is it a color?
It doesn't affect the color.
Oh, it doesn't.
It doesn't affect the color, but the bonding agent that they put on it is what gives it that stark whiteness that you don't like. If you don't use that, you would want to use fiber mesh instead.
Got it.
It's one or the other.
But more expensive, the fiber mesh.
Fiber mesh can be more expensive per pour.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes, I'm not going to back off on the exposed aggregate because I feel strongly we should be using that. You know, at each of these discussions, I've heard a lot about inconsistent application and that, you know, concrete poured one year is not going to look the same the next year because it may use a different mixture or pea gravel from a different location. We can control that. We can specify And we don't have to buy pea gravel and store it in our public works yard.
No,
We
that's
could just
not-
say, the pea gravel has to be purchased from this location. And we pick a location that has a sufficient supply of the material that we can go to every year to buy it.
I wasn't
We,
saying-
we simply, I'm not done. We simply say that the amount of cement and the amount of water has to be this. And then, so we specify that in the contract every year, and then we watch them pour it. And we make sure they do it right every year. And so I'm not buying the inconsistency in application as being an issue. I think that can be resolved by setting a standard and by overseeing and monitoring the actual work being performed each year. You know, everybody talked about the color, and the concentration has been on the color. The texture is just as important. I mean, even if you got the smooth concrete the same color as the exposed aggregate, it's going to look different. It's not going to look as good. It's going to be visually different just because of the texture. And I see that all over town where even if the color happens to match because it's aged or whatever, it's still a different texture. I see this as a quality issue, a standard issue, and I think that that not using the exposed aggregate is reducing our standards. It's putting out a lesser product on such a very important part of our infrastructure, and I won't support doing anything but using the exposed aggregate.
And my issue is totally cost. How many broken squares do we have in town?
3,300.
3,300. We can get 100 extra squares by doing this. If you don't have gutters on your house, are you going to wait until you can buy copper gutters, or are you going to just put gutters on the house and say, you know, that's the best I can do? And to me, I would much rather have the squares fixed and have not people falling and not able to walk down the streets than I would wait to have the copper gutters. That's the bottom line for me.
I agree with Trustee Collins, Trustee Foley as well.
I want to speak to Trustee.
Could I just
I
finish,
think we
please?
can do both.
I'm sorry.
Can I finish,
Yes,
please?
I'm sorry.
Yes. I agree with both of you, and I believe we spent way too much time already talking about sidewalks. We had this discussion last year. We voted on it. To me, what's before us is, are we going to renew this contract this year or not? Not, are we going to have brushed concrete or are we going to have aggregate? We decided that last year.
We also said
And
We
I'm
didn't.
sorry.
No, we said we would revisit it before we went out to bid again.
Let me just, I mean, right now, the way the ordinance reads is brushed concrete. That's what the board approved last year. We did say that we would revisit it, but right now, the current ordinance specifies brushed concrete. So to Trustee Hamilton's point, we should just decide whether we want to take advantage of 2014 pricing versus 2015 pricing. If the board wants Director Bailey to look into fiber mesh or the effect of linseed or the effect and cost of dyeing, we have some time. I think we have really probably until late May, June, before we have to pull the trigger on what kind of concrete to use. Is that?
We generally do not install a new sidewalk until after school. That's out in June.
So what I would suggest is that we focus on the contract at hand, and then if you want Director Bailey to come back with more information about some of these other alternatives, he can do that between now and then. Is that amenable to everyone?
That's fine. I would just like to go on record, though, as saying I'm not really interested in any alternatives that would increase the price for this year.
Can I ask a question about that? Director Bailey, if we vote on this contract and then ask you to come back with a dye or aggregate or some other way of doing this, will we still be able to take advantage of this by?
Well, if you're going to add some expense to the process, you should expect to pay more. Because, I've had the conversation with Schroeder, and Schroeder, just briefly, not in any great depth, and of course I didn't know where you folks would be coming from anyway, but but anyway, I'm sure that they will work with us, and let's just say that you decide that you want fiber mesh in there. There will be an upcharge. You should expect that, and then it's they're going to say it's another $1 per square foot or something like that. And then,
Overall, were you happy with their work, and or do you want to go with them?
they were good. They were very aggressive, you know, and that's how they make their money. I guess it's hard to keep in front of them or up with them, because they have a crew that comes in and they take out the old sidewalk. Right behind them is another crew that does forming, and right behind them is another crew that pours and finishes the concrete. You know, that's good and bad. They're in and out, done. But you always wish you could you know, be involved with them more than what you are, but it's hard to keep up with them. But, you know, I don't know that they're any worse than any other contractors that we've had here.
I think the only question that has come up is, because we do have the price for exposed aggregate, we know what that is. We do have the price for brushed concrete. The only thing we don't have is what it would cost to have them come back and do the linseed treatment, or what it would cost to add the fiber meshing. So I think those are pretty two easy questions to have.
That's easily attainable too. It's just
See, the thing about the fiber mesh is just it adds life to the sidewalk square, and it makes it last a lot longer, so that in 15 years we're not, you guys or whoever sitting here isn't talking about concrete squares. I think consistency in exposed aggregate, Trustee Pollock, you'll find as many versions of that as you will broom, brushed, concrete, all over the village. I have exposed aggregate in front of my house. It's totally different than the stuff in the CBD, totally different than the stuff the next block over from me. So there's as much difference in that. I wasn't saying that we have to haul the stone here and store it in Ed's backyard over at Public Works, but you won't. I truly believe that in colored concrete and exposed aggregate, consistency is, it's impossible to maintain in a large quantity. You're doing a driveway or a patio, great. But when you're doing literally a couple of miles of sidewalk, very hard.
So the motion and second before us then is to authorize the village manager to execute a contract renewal with Schroeder and Schroeder for the 2015 sidewalk replacement program in an amount not to exceed $80,000. Is there further comment on that motion?
Just a question, so we'll have another discussion on what exact type of material to use sometime before the work begins? Are we just locking in the price now?
That might, I mean, that's what I'm hearing, is that the board would like to hear about fiber mesh and dye and linseed oil, the pricing. Is that correct?
Sure.
So yes, there will be another conversation. Okay. So please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Hamilton. Aye. Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is a resolution authorizing the village manager to purchase a 2015 Toro 4100D wide area mower in the amount of $59,569.63 from Renders through the National Intergovernment Purchase Alliance Company. Motion by Mr. Foley, second by Ms. Collins. Mr. Bailey.
This is, next three items, including this one, are items that we worked through during the capital budget process last year. This Toro mower is very similar to the one we have now. Notably, one thing about it is the mower deck is out in front. That's what really how we want the configuration to be. You know, it's under budget, under what we had budgeted for it, so it's.
Any questions? Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, a resolution authorizing the village manager to purchase a 2015 Polaris Brutus HD PTO utility vehicle in the amount of $24,926.63 from Polaris Sales, Inc. through the National Joint Powers Alliance. Motion a second, please. Motion by Ms. Collins, second by Mr. Foley. Mr. Bailey.
This item was budgeted at $25,000. The way the genesis of this piece of equipment was a golf cart that we had that was needing some rather expensive repairs, and instead of repairing that golf cart that has very limited use. It's obviously cannot be used year-round and has little carrying capacity. Really can't put attachments on it. I have proposed purchase of a utility vehicle. It can be used year-round. It's street safe, street legal, I guess, as far as the lighting and everything. And I'm proposing also the inclusion of 2 attachments. One would be a plow and one would be a salt or sand spreader that will give us more flexibility and versatility.
Questions for Mr. Bailey?
Just minor. When I was reading it, it said that the bid price expired, I think, today or yesterday. Is that I assume that's not going to be a problem, right?
Right, we still have it.
Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton. Aye. Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. And lastly, a resolution authorizing the village manager to purchase a John Deere Z997R 60-inch zero-turn mower in the amount of $18,680 from Circle Tractor through the National Joint Powers Alliance. Motion and second, please. Someone? Motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Collins, second by Ms. Hamilton. Mr. Bailey?
Notable thing about this zero-turn mower is that it would have a diesel engine and a direct drive shaft versus belt drive off of PTO. We expect a lot more durability and less maintenance expense with this particular model. The current zero-turn mowers we have the clutch underneath the mower deck, and it takes a heck of a beating. And causes a lot of maintenance expense and downtime. So this is what we talked about during the budget process: a diesel engine, direct drive, drive shaft, and it's under budget.
Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have no new considerations. Is there any new business? Anyone? Hearing none, we do have need for an executive session this evening just to discuss whether a particular parcel of village-owned property should be sold and setting a price for the sale of said property. So I'd ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to reconvene, and no action will be taken in executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Hamilton. Second. Second by Mr. Foley. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Hamilton. Aye. Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Happy Easter. Happy spring.